All right, Philip, thanks for being here with us to share your journey. So why don't we find a little bit more about you first? So who are you? Where do you live? Where are you from?
Well, I'm Philip Leopold I grew up, was born and raised in El Campo, uh, here in the Diocese of Victoria. Uh, was born and raised Catholic. Uh, I don't know, just kind of had a normal upbringing. Uh, wasn't wasn't nothing too crazy, just a normal life. You know, we was we lived a pretty simple life growing up, and it wasn't nothing elaborate, which I'm thankful for now.
Yeah.
Didn't need all that glamour and glitz and all that stuff. Now seeing where I'm at today versus where I was, and a lot of that doesn't mean a whole lot. So
Well, yeah. Why don't we talk about that then? So you said you were, born into a Catholic home. But why don't you tell us about your faith journey? I know you weren't always close to God. Maybe ran away or rebelled a little bit different points. We know you spent some time in the rodeo too. Maybe that'll come up. But why don't you just share with us, Philip, what's been your faith journey, man?
oh man, where to even begin? Well, like I said, I was born and raised Catholic. Uh, went through, received all the First Communion, confirmation, went all the way through, graduated high school. Was still kind of on board with going to the mass on Sundays, and I guess sometime, I don't know, maybe shortly thereafter high school, I started to kind of just drift away, and before I knew it, I was completely 100% away from the church. Uh, didn't have God at all in my life, and it showed. It wasn't something. It was very. I mean, it was obvious. Uh, we were pretty wild, and all through high school, we never got any trouble with the law or anything like that. But we pushed it to the limits. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
But I'm anyway. So we, like I said, I rodeoed through high school, and a little bit after that in the junior college, and it just that's just a wild that was a wild time in a wild adventure. Let me just put it that way. But
Yeah. Let me ask you about that, Philip. Your time in the rodeo, what was life like? Were you on the road a lot? Were you doing shows? What was your role in the rodeo?
it was more of just like the weekend stuff. I when I got out of high school, all I wanted to do was ranch when I got for a living, and that was where I felt like I was directed, and of course, that's what I wanted. And at that time in my life, that's all I cared about is what I wanted.
Yep.
It didn't matter who I stepped on. It didn't matter what I had to do to get something. That to make sure that I got what I wanted was most important at that time. But it was pretty much because I was working during the week, so there was a lot on the weekends, during the week, at night. I mean, it was a lot of we didn't travel very far, but it was a lot of traveling. I made it. All the other guys made it through there, and that was just a chapter. And I guess a lot of people at some point in their life go through something similar to that. So, and then you kind of start to grow up, and then life hits, and before you know it, here I am. I would have never, if you would have told me that I would be sitting in front of you telling you my story on how I came to know who God was.
Yeah.
20 years ago, I would have laughed in your face and told you you're crazy. You're
Or how about even that it would be your idea to get other guys to come up with this whole study too. This whole thing was your idea, this Fully Alive. So
yeah.
so then so you're in the rodeo. right? And then,
Right.
so what happened where things
So,
started to turn around, or you hit rock bottom? What kind of happened in your life?
well, to right out of high school, of course, everybody, they dated people throughout high school and stuff, and I was engaged to a girl, and it got to a point where I just knew that was not the right. It wasn't the right move, and so that we broke up, and shortly thereafter ended up meeting another lady, a girl, and we dated for, I don't know, years, and ended up getting married. And to make a long story short, that's a whole nother, segment in itself. But we ended up dating for, I guess we dated for 4 or 5 years, and then we ended up getting married, and we got married in the Catholic Church. We knew that even as far as I was away from God, I knew that there was no doubt that we needed to get, and I think she did it as well, that we needed to be married in the church. And I couldn't tell you why at the time. I think it was just more along the lines, and I hear this all the time now. It's, well, that's just the way we were raised to do, and that's what we did. So I couldn't give you an example. I couldn't give you an explanation at that time if you had asked me. But anyway, we were married for almost maybe 3 years, and of course, without God in it, one can only imagine where that went. So we ended up getting a divorce, and thereafter that is kind of when, I don't know, I took some time off to myself, and just I really got into fishing a lot, and just trying to fill the void, and the solitude and the quietness of my life at that time. But anyway, ended up meeting another girl, and we dated. We ended up getting married, and knowing now, we probably, that should have never happened.
Yeah.
All the signs were there. She knew it. I knew it. It was just, something wasn't right.
Yeah.
And we did it anyway.
Yeah.
And keep it. And at the time, I still didn't have. God was still just he was just a distant memory. I mean, it was. He was nowhere to be found in my life. And shortly after that divorce, it took about a year, maybe, I don't know, 6 months to a year. It started to kind of kick in as to, what, there's got to be more to life than this. I can't do this on my own. I'm just a miserable wretch. And nothing was working out. Nothing, everything I touched, just, it was always something missing. And so it finally got to a point where it was like, you know what, I got to figure out what's going on. And I can still remember, and I look back on all the guys that I follow now, and listening to their stories, and how they came, either how they grew their faith from where they were at, or they came back to the church where they had drifted away, or came from from another denomination or whatnot, or converted. But one that sticks out in my mind is from Curtis Martin, and I think I shared that with some of y'all guys at one point. But when he talks about, you can always remember the specific, there'll be times when you can go back and remember specifically when you saw God. Wasn't working his magic, but he was there, and you knew that, hey, something happened. You saw a change, and I've got several of those And the initial one for me was coming, I was just down on everything, and actually having to figure out, okay, what's my next move going to be in life in general, and thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way to this, and
Got to be a better way than Philip's way.
Exactly, and just that little bit of a decision, shifted everything into a different direction. I started.
Do you feel like God started to show up as soon as you just gave him an inch?
Oh yeah,
you started to see him. Yeah.
Well, I started to feel the thump in the back of my head a little bit harder.
it turned into a big thing by then.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, it started with that. I remember exactly to this day. For some reason, I was on the floor. I was doing some stuff, and just so happened I was on my knees when I had that thought. And I remember, I believe I probably sat there on the floor for a good 30 to 40 minutes, just thinking about that.
Yeah.
And, then one thing led to another. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go get me a Bible. And I decided the next day, I'm like, and it's still, I didn't even want anybody to know that I was doing this. So I'm picking and choosing the time that I'm going to go into the store.
And, so that no one else would see you?
Yeah, nobody'd see my truck there.
Oh my God. That's hilarious.
So anyway, so I build up the nerve to go into, we've got a Christian store here in El Campo, and I go in, and I remember walking in and looking at that wall of Bibles and thinking to myself, "Lo, what in the world? Which one do you buy?" And so, I didn't at the time didn't know any better, and I thought, well, I've heard a lot about the King James, so that's what I ended up getting.
There we go.
And so anyway, so I get that, and I'm reading through it. Definitely wasn't devoted to it 100%, but here and there, little by little, started reading, scripture and stuff like that. Couldn't make sense of any of it. None of it made any sense at all. But I stuck with it, and I don't know, that probably went on for about 4, 5, 6 months maybe.
And you were by yourself doing all this?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
You didn't tell anybody?
No, nobody.
Yeah.
And actually, I can back up a little bit after my divorce the second time. I actually ended up meeting a girl, and she had a little daughter and everything. And I thought, well, man, this is it. This is where I'm, everything was good. We dated for a couple years, never had an argument, never fought about anything. I thought, man, this is, and that just, for some reason, it just fizzled out.
Yeah.
And that's, backing up just a little bit, but that was right after that is when it really started to kick in.
Yeah.
But anyway, so here I'm trying to read the Bible, still not going to mass, and didn't want to dig that deep into it yet. And so anyway, for years, my family, all of them, I say all, most of them, they've all been on Acts retreat, and I was completely against it. They always were hounding me to go, and I don't know. My dad's probably served on team 7 or 8, 9 times. My brothers, and a lot of my relatives, they've all been. And just so happened, my uncle was on the team for one. It was at Christmas time. It was Christmas, December the 2016, and or 15 rather. And he was on the team, and he handed me an envelope with an application. Didn't say anything, just handed it to me. Said, "Here, fill this out and get it back to me.
Yeah.
So I thought about it for a little while. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go see what that's about. And so I filled it out. Everybody was just like, they didn't even know what to think about that.
They couldn't even believe it. Yeah, because they knew you.
Yeah, they were like, it just,
They were the ones.
everybody
They're the
was
ones you were
shocked.
trying to avoid when you were going to buy your Bible.
Oh yeah. I mean, but you know, all through those years, I was anti-Catholic and anti-church, and you know, the church has all these rules, and you know, what's up with this rule, and you know,
I
all
just want to
through
live
all
my
that,
life.
exactly, and all through that whole process, you know, that's something that I really have to contend with today is when you ask a practicing Catholic a question,
Yeah.
something simple that you would think that they should know,
Yeah.
and you ask them a question, you know, that was an obvious question that I was always asking. You know, we would be down at the bay, and everybody would be getting dressed on Saturday evening to go to mass, and there I was, the only one that just, you know, don't even ask me to go because you know the answer. And you know, I can remember asking several of them, why do I need to go to mass? And they couldn't answer that question.
Oh man.
So you know, but anyway, so you know, I ended up going on the retreat, and I didn't participate in anything. I was there, I watched everything. I mean, I participated, but I didn't open up about anything. I just absorbed everything that was there. And I guess right after that is when it was like God grabbed me by the shirt collar and he said, all right, you want to go for a ride? Let's go. And
You want a real ride? Yeah. You want a real wild ride? You follow me.
And that was the start of it. And you know, for me, man, once I made that decision that, okay, I'm going to give this a try, I mean, it was like full-fledged, full throttle. Everything was full speed ahead. There was like, I mean, there was times when things were happening and I was absorbing so much stuff that it would just overwhelm you or me.
Yeah.
And it'd get to, I mean, I've read stuff, you know, about being spiritually just exhausted.
Yeah.
And I went through, oh man, I went through how much of that, because it was just so much. And you know, I would get to a point to where I would like, okay, I'm going to learn a little bit about this, and it wouldn't be 2-3 days later I was off on another completely different topic because of where that led, and that I had to come all the way back. And you know, it was, there's so much that is just being missed, and it's so rich with the traditions that we're handed on to uphold and to carry. And so anyway, I come off the retreat, and I'm kind of on fire. And I thought, man, this is pretty good. I'm gonna keep. I got to do something to keep this going. And so I'm all over the place. I'm watching videos. I'm listening to guys' talks, and just doing what I could, you know, to keep everything, keep me motivated and keep me going.
Yeah.
And at the time, then I was like, okay, I'm going to start going back to mass. And that was another one of the turning points when you make that final decision to say, hey, no matter what, on Sunday, no matter what has to change in my schedule, I'm going to make Sunday mass.
Yeah.
And once I made that decision, I mean, it was like an accelerator just kicked in, and I started to learn so much. And like I said, there was so much that that I'd never been taught. If I was taught it, I sure don't remember it. But
Well, that's, you know, that's that sacramental grace coming in. So you return to the sacraments, and
so,
you know, think about your story. 'Cause a lot of guys listening might have been baptized when they were babies, right, a long time ago. But what do you have to say about the people that were in your life helping to plant those seeds? Because, you know, people think a lot of times it's this one-time conversion, and it's a big boom. But there are people in your life, like your parents, that brought you to baptism, your sacraments. So while you were away, lots of seeds had been planted, so that when you decide I'm going to light the fire, it was like, because all those embers were there. So what do you have to say about that and the seeds planted along the way?
man, a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, obviously there was a lot of seeds planted, and I think for me, for where I'm at today, and I'm asked this quite often. You know, I get in conversations with people who their kids have left the church, and you know, obviously they're first, well, what brought you back? And I sit down and I explain to them what it was for me. But it has to happen on their own. But the seeds are there.
Yeah.
But what was the most frustrating part for me in coming back is all the questions that I had. And I can't tell you the number of times that I would go over to my parents after all this had transpired and sit down and just having dinner with them in an evening. Inevitably, the conversation would lead to something about the church. And I would have all these questions, and they didn't have the answers. Yeah. And I'm thinking, you know, and it's not just them. You know, obviously when we started our men's groups, it was the same kind of the situation. But you know, the biggest thing that I can tell people, you know, I know my parents prayed for me continually that I'd come back to the church. But then once that happened, it was like, now what? What do I do?
This guy's
bull now.
He's ready now.
Yeah, they were overwhelmed because, you know, and it was tough. I mean, there was times I know, whether they'll admit it or not, but I know that there was times that I would probably show up over there and they would probably think, oh man, not tonight. Not tonight.
So what'd you do then? Where'd you go to find all these answers to these questions that started raising up?
I probably read, even though I was raised Catholic, I probably read my way back into the faith. Just knowing, just knowing how everything is laid out, and you know, you putting all the pieces to the puzzle together was a big one for me. I don't know, right?
Well, I think it's a great testimony, Philip, to like, 'cause a lot of people will say, you know, church, I need you to give me this. I need you to give me this. But, you know, God has given us, well, for the sacrament. So it is a beautiful thing how Catholics know, you know, the sacraments are so important. But then you're a great story about how you can self-learn a lot. There's resources out there, there's talks, you know, so if someone's out there listening and thinking, you know, the church isn't there for them, and the church should be there for them. They should be. But there are places you can look. So who are some of like your favorite resources, authors that really made an impact on you?
Oof. Oh man, it was a bunch. I would probably say, well, let me back up, because, you know, for me, coming in the way that I did, or coming back to the church, I ended up listening to a lot of the Protestant preachers and stuff on whether it be on the internet or TV or whatnot. But one of them that that initially that really kind of helped me gain a little bit of understanding about stuff was Dr. Charles Stanley, and he helped a lot. And but then the more that I was like, okay, the more that I really started to dig into the Catholic faith, and I was like, well, there's more to there's more to it than what he's actually letting on to. And so then I started like, okay, I'm gonna, I know the true faith that we're supposed to follow is laid out as is Catholic, and so I started to like, okay, well, I need to find guys to follow that are Catholic. Well, lo and behold, then I started unfolding the church fathers, and I get into those guys, and St. John Christensen, St. Augustine.
Oh yeah. Those are perfect guys for you because they kind of match your personality of like, they just intensely pursued God in their writing, especially St. John. I mean, it's like they aggressively pursued Christ.
And probably outside of those guys, then I kind of figured out who Scott Hahn was, and then I figured out, you know, everything that I uncovered was, it was like every day when I woke up, it was like, okay, what am I going to learn today? Because it seemed like it was something. I never knew that there was a TV channel specifically for Catholics, EWTN. And once I found that, you know, then I started to understand and learn who some of these guys were. And, you know, I think the ones that have had the most impact on me probably has been Scott Hahn, Dr. David Anders with Call to Communion, and the King, Dr. Brant Petrie. He's
your favorite?
He's at the top. Yeah.
That's awesome.
He is.
Well, yeah, he's got that great book about the Eucharist, Jesus and the Jewish roots of the Eucharist.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Did you read that one?
Oh yeah, we actually did a study. Our Father Tommy over in Fort Lavaca, he had a class on that one. So yeah.
So Philip, fast forward a little bit then.
So
feel free to go back and fill in the blanks. But I was gonna just mention. I know that now that when you got kind of built up in the faith a bit, right? Your mission became, I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. So just like the picture behind you, fishing, right? You want to go fishing for men. You want it to be ready for these guys when they come back. So what are some of the things you've been doing once you got ready and formed to help, to pitch in, to get people back and help them stay in the boat, stay in the church?
Well, the biggest one for me has been the men's groups.
Yeah.
And you know, let me back up just a little bit. Once I came off of that retreat, that was one of the things that I had read online that a lot of guys were getting involved in, was men's groups. And so I started looking around. I think I searched over the whole diocese and couldn't find a Catholic men's group anywhere. And so I ended up having to go to one, a non-denomination one in Victoria. And I went to that one for 5 or 6 months before I discovered the one in El Campo that they had was a small group. And but anyway, that kind of kicked it in gear again, you know. And once I got around those guys, they were a huge stepping stone, because now all of a sudden these are the guys I've been looking for that I can relate to. And you know, you start to build that relationship with them to where each guy's you,nique in his own little way. Everybody's on a different journey. It took me a long time to understand that, because I thought, well, you know, if you're following God, everybody's walking the same.
We're like, you know, I agree. I used to think the same thing. We're like robots on a conveyor belt, and all, you know, a Christian man just comes out, it's like, drink. But you're right. When you get in small groups with other men, you rub off on each other. You realize how different all of us are, and the gifts of other guys, you know, where maybe as guys sometimes and as people, it's sad we judge people for how they behave, but then you realize, no, that's how God made them, and it's so special and unique. And I got a lot to learn from that guy, even though he's a lot different than me. Yeah, because guys also don't open up right away, but once you get in a format like that, the real person and their backstories and what they've been through, that all starts to come out.
Oh yeah. So, then I started attending the men's group, and we decided as a group shortly thereafter to start a Bible study, men's Bible study. So we did that. Well, all of a sudden now I'm finding all these other men's groups that are popping up, and I ended up going to one, then I went to another, and before I knew it, I was going somewhere every day of the week. And
that's right, Philip. Didn't you tell me at some point when you were on this journey of discovery, you'd find something to do in the morning, go to work, you'd find something to do in the afternoon. Basically, you were just, it's like almost like you were in seminary. You were just studying all the time.
All the time. And I tell you, the biggest thing for me, and still to this day, the day that I discovered adoration was,
That's when it went to high gear.
39 years old and never even heard of adoration before. And I never knew that there was an adoration chapel. I had no earthly idea. And there again, everything was just like baby steps. I remember walking into the chapel once. Somebody, one of the guys in the men's group he was the one who told me about it. And so I ended up going there. I can remember sitting outside waiting to make sure there was only one person in there, because I didn't want anybody to see me.
You were hiding all over El Campo, man, all over town, at all the Christian hotspots. You were hiding. You're sneaking in.
And so I finally get the nerve to go in, and I get in there, and I didn't even go into the chapel the way that it's set up. I ended up going into the sanctuary and just sitting in the sanctuary. But it was just, everything was gradual. It wasn't just, jump in off, feet first. And but I think that was a good thing in the sense that it allowed to take those baby steps, allowed me the opportunity to fully understand and to grasp what that was that I was actually participating.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing for guys to know is God's going to work with you, right? He's not going to go take you from A to Z overnight. He doesn't typically do that, even though you were moving fast, right? But he was doing it at a pace it's kind of like he was working at the pace with which your will and you as a person were ready for. But, it was still fast. I mean, we're only talking 4.5 years, but God seems like, to me, was making up for lost time those years away. He said, all right, man, you're back. We got to get you up to speed because I got a mission for you. Because God never, and I was just reading about this recently, you cannot find in Scripture a time where someone meets God and is not sent in mission. So if you meet God, so guys listening, if you meet him, if you let yourself open up to him, he's going to use you. It's not going to be a boring little, drift, down the ocean or in the river in a boat. He's got a mission for you, and it's going to be more exciting than whatever mission you thought you had without him.
Way more.
Yeah.
But you got to be open to it. That's the key.
Yeah.
That's the key. But but I think the best advice that I could give somebody that's headed in that direction is you've got to get past yourself first. If you're unable to let that guard down and to open up to say, okay, here's my weaknesses, here's my faults, let's deal with them. I don't know, for me anyway, that's what it took. He had to bring me completely to my knees for me to actually open up and be accepting to what he had to offer. And a lot of it's just pride, and I think when you get to that point where you're actually you know, for once I really got into the groove and was really digging in hard, there was people that I came across that, you know, I've had several guys tell me, you know, I hear a guy's walking with God all the time, but you're jogging with him. You're not walking with him. But I said, you know, it's a choice that you made. And I said, the thing that the thing that I'm willing to bring to the table for other guys is, man, once you get past yourself and you realize that you can't do it on your own, and he starts to open up the doors and he starts to shed light on different stuff, you know, you have to yield to that.
You just got to pick it up. You just got to keep going. Like at the beginning of your story, talk about you just started to look up, right? And you didn't even know really necessarily that it was God. Probably deep down you'd be like, there's a better way, but Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So you found him. So what would you say, or what are the things that are most different about you now versus 10 years ago when you were far from God?
I think now for me is the big thing where I'm at today is I try to see God in everything, whether it be, you know, something as simple as, what's a good example? You know, just everyday stuff at work where somebody's having a bad day, you know, and they're coming down on you about something. You know, there's times where I can, and I'm no angel by any means still, and I've got a long ways to go, but you know, I catch myself, okay, all right, what would God do in this situation?
Yeah.
What unique transformation can I make in myself that will help this person for whatever it may be? And so I think you know, once you get to that point to where you're accepting of God and you've allowed him to enter into your life, it's not about you anymore. It's not about what I want. You know, and me and you've had conversations before about the marriage portion of all this. And you know, when I came off of my divorce from my first wife, you know, that was really tough, and it was really hard to get past it. And you know, I really don't think anybody ever gets past those. But now you start to see, man, you know, 7, 8 years ago, if you had asked me what went wrong, I would have blamed it all on her. Now, today, you know, probably 80-90% of it was me. And he starts to show you that stuff, and then it's like, okay, I got to change this and I got to change that. And before you know it, now all of a sudden everything has changed. You're acting different. You're talking different. You're you know, you're more conscious and you're aware of your surroundings and the impact that you actually have on people and how that affects other people's lives. And, you know, now it's all about, from where it was at, say 8-10 years ago to now, I really want to help people to not go through the misery and the pain and the heartbreak that I went through just because I was just so full of myself. And so I don't know.
Like
go ahead.
God helps us see things as they are, you know, how we really are, the good and the bad, warts and all, you know, our impact on other people. It's not just about us. You know, Cody said the same thing in his sharing. Your life is not about you. You begin to learn that, not in a demeaning way, like, you know, but yeah, you know, if anything, men typically need to work on it. It's being more humble and seeing we're not we're not the saviors of the world. There's one Savior who came. And your story makes me think of the scripture passage in Matthew 7. I think it's verses 7-8. Jesus says, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open. For everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds. And to him who knocks the door will be open." So it's, you just started looking and you just kept finding. And that's all you got to do is look up. Just keep looking up. And you're going to find God everywhere, even in your past, right? Even in your past.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I can visually go back and see the times that he was there and he was like, "Come on," and I can just picture me and some of the guys in the men's group. We got a picture that we float around, and it's our guardian angel with his hands on his head. Oh God, he's doing it again.
We got to get that picture to share with people listening.
So anyway, I looking back, everything is just taking a completely different perspective, whether it be how you treat your family, your friends, the men in a men's group, the people, how you serve in the church. I mean, that was a big one for me is we're not called to be served, we're called to serve. And
Absolutely. Amen.
That's, for me, that's where I completely 100% without a shadow of a doubt missed the mark when I was married.
Yeah, right.
It was all about
right. And as husbands, we're called to lay down our lives for our wives. We're called to really sacrifice marriage, personalize, or even those longer days because the family needs that income, or those longer hours, or whatever it might be. You're right. We're called to model Christ and just lay it all down for our bride.
Yep. So for me, that was a big one. It's like, okay, none of it's about me. The minute I make it about me, I've lost that battle. and that was huge. Once you enter into stuff with that perspective,
yeah,
it was a game changer for me.
So you gave up Philip's way for the highway, the wild ride of following Jesus. So, I got one more question for you. You mentioned what you would tell guys that are kind of on that journey of seeking Christ. What would you tell guys that don't have God in their life? Or maybe they kind of have. They go to Mass on Sunday, and that's about like the guys you used to be around that would get dressed for Mass and can tell you why they go to Mass, but that's pretty much they go to Mass and they just do it. What would you tell guys that are either far from God or maybe just have kind of a, casual relationship with God? What would you tell them?
Oh man, probably. I don't know. That's a tough one because you could go so many directions, but probably you've just got to be open to let him take control.
Yeah.
I can personally tell you that once I let my guard down and said, okay, you take the wheel, I'm following you, and the like I said earlier, the doors start to open, the understanding, the knowledge, the wisdom, everything starts to pour in. I mean, you better be ready for it because if you ask for it, he's gonna give it to you. But like I said, you got to be open to it. Just for guys that I talk to a lot of guys about attending the men's groups and stuff like that. Don't be scared to attend one of the men's groups in your areas. I mean, I was that guy but I didn't have anybody reaching out for me.
Right.
If there's a big, huge group of guys within the Diocese of Victoria right now. There's multiple men's groups out there that you don't have to you can come participate.
You can just listen like you did on your Acts retreat. You just sit there, don't say a word, and just let it marinate, soak in, and see what you think about it.
You don't have to do anything you want to. You don't have to share anything you don't want to. We get into some, we cover everything in our men's groups. It goes all over the board. I mean, there's, my dad, for instance, I mean, he's excited. He attends them all because he's learning stuff. He's 70 years old, and he always makes the comment, "Yeah, I'm 70 years old. Why am I just now learning all this stuff?"
Well,
So
thank God it's never too late, man. Well, what a joy that must be for him to have you next to him. So I keep thinking of that story, the prodigal son, as we're talking too. And there was your dad, faithful Catholic. You drifted off. Are you the oldest brother?
the oldest, yeah.
So you wandered off, but man, you came back, and now you're in that group with your dad. What a blessing.
So yeah,
So,
I would just encourage anybody that wants to make a change, just give it a try. It'll change your life. I mean,
what have you got to lose? What have
Exactly.
you got to lose?
I mean, believe me, when I initially started my faith journey, and I heard a lot of the talks, and a lot of the guys said, just it'll change your life. And I'm thinking, how in the world is this going to change my life? I'd have never in a million years guessed. But no, it's been good. I mean, I wish that I would have 20 years ago, I would have had this, because there would have been a lot of stuff. I think a lot of stuff would be different than what it is now.
Yeah. Well, praise God, Philip. Well, thank you for turning around when you did. You're an inspiration to a lot of guys. You're helping a lot of guys get their life on track too. So, I just thank you for that. Any last parting words you want to share?
I think that's it till the next go around, I guess.
All right, man.
Plenty to share. I just don't have enough time.
There'll be more coming for sure. It's not the end of this, I got a feeling. So, for all the guys listening, this was Philip's story. Now, just like in Cody's story, the first video, you can go to the webpage for this series. It's called Fully Alive. So victoriadiocese.org/fully-alive. And you can find reflection questions, either for personal reflection or to chat about with a buddy or a group. There'll also be suggested readings for prayer or articles, or even some of the speakers Philip mentioned on the talk. We'll have links to all that, so you can continue on the journey. And then we'll be hearing from some other guys soon. So Philip, I just thank you for being vulnerable, for sharing your story, and thanks for turning around and meeting God and deciding you wanted to jog with Him.
You bet.